Look at all these wonderful people.
Mhm.
The gang is all here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's up, party people?
Hey, Paul, I thought you were going to be cross-country skiing here.
What's going on? You live.
I'm on here for like 2 minutes. I've got like 19 feet of snow. I haven't even shoveled my deck yet. And this big handsome fella right here and I are going to be out in the forest. We're on this call, but I'm going to mute myself so that I can hear you guys. I just wanted to say hi.
Awesome.
Hey, Heather.
Yes.
Heather.
Yeah.
Heather, I am so sorry for you guys and your team, and I think about Karen like all the time right now.
Oh, well,
I'm
thank
so
you very much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, anyways, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope her
Yeah.
husband's hanging in
Yeah.
there. So
There was
really-
a lovely celebration of her life, and they actually had it online, and it was really well done. Really, really well done. Because a lot of us didn't want to travel up north, and so no,
Was
it
it?
was good.
Did they happen? Is that? Would you know if you can? I didn't see it. Did you know if you could watch it or
Yeah,
like
it's
was it
recorded, Paul. I can send
Yeah.
you the link if you like. It's
Yeah.
it's beautiful, really. Yeah, for people on the call, I don't know if you knew her, Karen Hager. She was our director of science engagement. She passed away on New Year's Eve.
Oh,
She's
God.
battling cancer for the last 2 years. So
best human ever?
yeah.
Best human ever. Anyways, hi
Yeah.
everybody.
Well,
I'm
thank you.
gonna take my camera off.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for jumping on this call, especially so last minute. With the people who are reaching out to me and my colleagues here just saying, what in the heck is going on? We thought that this would be a really great opportunity for the whole group of us to get together and try to brainstorm some ways that we can approach logistics and some of the issues that we're seeing as far as trucking goes and supply chain issues and all of that. So a couple of quick kind of housekeeping things if you're not speaking, because I'm gonna try not to do all the talking here. Please mute yourself. And as you would like to join the conversation, unmute yourself. I'm going to structure this in a little bit of a way so that we have some form to this conversation. I really, really want it to be productive, that everyone can come out of it with some really great tips and tricks to approach this. There are a lot of variables at play when we start talking about trucking, and I'm hoping that this conversation that we're having will provide a little bit of color to what it is that that we're currently facing. We're fortunate enough to have some folks from the logistics side of things that I'm hoping will be able to provide a little bit more detail and shed some light on some larger issues that are going on and some ways that they think that that we can approach things. But in order to kick things off, since most traveling exhibits roles, you may be the only person in your organization that are dealing with this issue, or just trying to deal with one-off situations that have you kind of pulling your hair out. I'm going to quickly just open up the floor for folks to just kind of give a quick synopsis of some of the things that you're dealing with, so that we know what the issues are that we're trying to solve. I would love for this to be really short and sweet. If you would like to share, if you can use the reactions and raise your hand, we can make sure that everyone has just a few moments to say what it is they're dealing with. So I'm going to pick on Troy here to kick this off. He's the one who originally called me and said, hey, can we circle the wagons and figure this out?
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. First of all, big thank you to you for acting so quickly and the rest of the 10 board. I've had several conversations with colleagues in the industry and clients, and it's just been such a change, and there's been so much that we've had to deal with through the pandemic. And on top of that, we know the issues happening in the trucking world, shortage of truckers, also cross-border issues to increase of fuel costs. There's been tremendous challenges, and with that comes a pretty large increase year over year in shipping In fact, we do about, this past year, we do about $150,000 US in shipping. And the cost last year, from the numbers that Catherine on our team has shared with me today, was $295 a mile approximately, and we're up to $368. And I know that we put it out to the market quite a bit, and it continues to rise. And not only that, on top of that, the reliability of shipping companies, from getting last minute cancellations where we have to scramble, find a new shipping company, and they all of a sudden are double in cost. And this is happening more and more. And it not only impacts Science North or any of you that develop travel and exhibits, it's a cost that will also be borne, really most of the time is borne by the hosting location. And that's an incredible increase in cost year over year that they didn't plan for, on top of being hit by reduced attendance or closures that are still taking place. So what I thought was, could we bring the group together through 10, which was really instrumental at the beginning of the pandemic and bringing us together in working groups in finding our way through this. I'm not sure we're going to have any solutions to it, but today, just getting the conversation started, starting to think about, are there some tactics or some strategies that others are using? Maybe there's somebody on the call here from the shipping industry. This is not intended to be targeted at the shipping industry. They're facing challenges as well, but this is more meant to see if we have a common thread here with the shipping challenges, and maybe together we can come up with a few tactics and solutions and conversations with the shipping company, and maybe identify some of the better ones out there that aren't canceling and that will honor the agreement that they've made with us. So there have been some pretty big horror stories that could really cripple a smaller business in this industry in a short period of time. And I don't want to see that happen. And quite honestly, without shipping, traveling exhibits are just exhibits. So this is a major crisis that we need to start thinking about and start to have some actionable solutions, or at least strategies to start to mitigate some of these challenges. So anyway, thank you for all attending. And thank you, Cynthia and the 10 board. I reached out, and within a few days she had this organized, and I would love to hear some other stories, and maybe some good news stories and things that are happening, or how you're dealing with this. Anyway, thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Troy. Paul?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, thanks, Troy. Troy and I got on a conversation about this, and I was sharing a couple of, I guess, horror stories for us right now. 5 of the last 6 trucks we have booked have no-showed or been severely delayed, but like no-showed at the last minute. And it's almost feeling to me like these trucking companies, and again, I'm not trying to beat up on people, but we start thinking about 5 of the last 6 trucks that have come to us. We're being told, like, the day before we're leaving Denver, that all 3 drivers in 3 separate trucks have all been tested positive for COVID, and we're literally they're supposed to be there in less than 24 hours. And by the time we go out for another quote, our price to ship something from Denver to Arizona and store it goes from $18,000 to $33,000 in 24 hours. We've dealt with another situation where a trucking company, we had over a 2-week delay getting an exhibit from Cleveland to Edmonton, which would have been problematic in itself, except we really couldn't get any clear or concise communication as to where the trucks even were. And we were told 2 separate times, actually, that the trucks were going to arrive outside of the first time. Each time we're renting a forklift, we are paying for laborers to be there, because this was an exhibit we were setting up at West Edmonton Mall. And we have calculated we lost about $85,000 because we could not have an exhibit open that we partnered with as an exhibit for West Edmonton Mall over the Christmas holidays, where we had have sold tickets at $5,000 a day, and we could not open over the Christmas holidays when kids were out of school. So that logistically, we're actually probably closer to about 90,000, because we had staff literally staying in Edmonton because we were being told that the truck's going to arrive in 3 days. And it finally reached a point we said, somebody needs to open the back of this truck and take a picture. We actually thought our stuff was lost because we were getting no communication as to what it was. It cost us a ton of revenue. I'm thankful it wasn't a major museum or any museum that was expecting us to be open, because we couldn't even tell our partner being West Edmonton Mall where the truck even was when this was happening. So these were and this has all happened to us in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's probably cost us in the neighborhood of about $110,000 or $120,000 at this point in time.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing, Paul. Nicholas?
Hi, I'm Nicholas Register from Silver Plume Exhibitions. I know a couple of you from Hacking the Crate and other talks. I always like joining in on the shipping stuff, so thanks for organizing this. Just to give 2 quick stories, kind of why I chimed in on this is my goal on exhibits has been sustainability. And in one of our latest project, which was Exploring Extinction, the Dodo, the goal was to create a small enough exhibit that we could ship less than a load, so we don't have to take a whole truck up. And my experience on shipping that for our first shipment was that if you're going LTL, it's very hard to get a guaranteed date of delivery. And of course, price, if you go with the cheaper companies that don't offer guaranteed dates, then it's not even an option. And you have to pay quite a bit, or just rent out the whole truck to ship 5 pallets, which was exactly the goal against sustainability. So our experience doing that was terrible, because the museum we were delivering to, kind of like Paul said, has to get a forklift and a crew to receive delivery, and they don't just have hands on site on call to come in and do it. So they really have to plan like a week or 2 in advance. So my challenge has been LTL. I will join that with the statement of, I have a truck showing up tomorrow that's picking up our exhibit here in Philly and taking it back to Denver. And that company, we've used them 4 or 5 times over the pandemic, and they have never failed us. They're still giving us a great price, and I haven't had an issue with a driver not showing. I haven't had any issues with them at all. For those, we rent the whole truck, though, for the shipment. So 2 of my experiences.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I am getting a couple of private DMs here of folks asking what LTL stands for. Some of our logistics folks that are on, can you give a really quick synopsis of what that means?
Very simply, it's just less than a truckload. Any shipment that's not going to take the whole truck.
Great, thank you, Jim. Jim is with McAllister's, so thank you so much for being with us. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to share? All right. If you don't want to unmute, you're more than welcome to put things in the chat as well. When we started talking about having this conversation, I was reaching out to a few different shippers, as well as some of the museums that I know are facing multiple turnovers here. And I did reach out to my friend Daniel over at OMSI, and he said that he fortunately has not dealt with some of these issues. And Daniel, I see that you're on. Can I just pick your brain here on some of the ways that you oversaw or overcame some of these challenges?
Yes, if you give me about 5 minutes. I just got back to my loft. So
Yeah,
that
no
I can
worries.
do this unmasked. And I'll be on the computer in a second.
Yeah, no worries. I actually see a few other hands
up
here.
Yeah.
So why don't we jump over to Julia with Museum of Science?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm at the Museum of Science in Boston. I mostly am dealing with our Science Behind Pixar exhibition. We have 2 copies, one international and one domestic. We've been really lucky with our shipping company. We've been using Sterling Trucking, who's based here. Sorry, dog. Our contact is based here in Boston, but they've been great, both incoming and outgoing. The struggle that we are having is with all the rescheduling of the exhibits, we have a gap in our schedule, and we're really struggling to find storage space for a 10,000 square foot exhibit. I am so sorry. The joys of working from home. So the storage issue is more our problem, where we're actually looking at warehouses kind of, so sorry, midway between our known venues. We're looking at storage midway between our known venues instead of at our destinations, which has been a really big struggle for us. I'm going to mute myself now. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Julia, and thanks for your furry friend there to add their 2 cents. Let's see here, Dominique.
All right. Hi, good evening, everyone, or good morning to all of you. I'm Dominic Jahn. I'm from the Visual Design Museum in Weil am Rhein, Germany. And yeah, I wanted to join today to hear all of your thoughts, and also wanted to share some of our experiences. We have a team actually working on traveling exhibitions. So we have 5 people in total, as all our major exhibitions are shipping across the world. And so we have quite a few different experiences with currently having no exhibition in the US, but I was just this week speaking to our German shipping partners about potentially bringing an exhibition to Boston, and they were just throwing their hands over their heads saying it's so incredibly difficult to get trucks from the port in New York to Boston. And they just said, if at all possible, wait and see how things develop. This is an exhibition we're trying to bring to Boston in October potentially. And just more broadly, especially with bringing exhibitions overseas, just to give you a rough idea, most of our exhibitions are between 3 and 5 truckloads or shipping containers. And just rates, especially anything overseas, is really through the roof. Here in Europe with trucks, we've so far been relatively solid, and all of that has still worked rather well in the last few weeks and months. But I think now with Omicron rising, there's going to be a shortage of trucks, especially in continental Europe now as well. But yeah, bringing exhibitions to the US especially has been really tricky in the last 2 years in general, just with all steps of the way, sea transport and then trucks in the US. Has been really a struggle.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. We did get a number of different questions about international transport, so we'll make sure that we ask those at the end here. Mari, I'm probably gonna butcher your name.
Dominique, you might be able to pronounce my name.
I think I would.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know. My dad's Belgian, so maybe the language is a little different. I'm new, and I am listening to what you guys are saying, and I am working at a much smaller scale, I think, than probably most of the people here. I have my own company, and what I've had to do in the last few years because of the transportation issues, I work in the education field where I have exhibits going into schools, and they're touring around with experience design pieces. And partly because we're not able to get things out or get supplies, I have moved to miniature scale experiences with students. However, one of the biggest issues I'm still facing is supply chain issues, particularly with wood and electronics. And again, my stuff is on a much smaller scale now, and that I thought was going to alleviate some of the issues. But some of the issues are even being able to get components from overseas. And in the last few months, I've had to start paying. I have I'm by the universities here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and trying to network with students like the international kids and paying them to bring me over components but it's ridiculous because I shouldn't have to do this. But otherwise I'm looking at either 6 weeks delay to 6 months delay to just ghosting, and the packages just never arrive and they're lost in transit. And there's no answers from the shipping people as to they have no idea where these packages are, except that they're probably in the dead mail zones, which to me is not, that's not really an acceptable answer right now, because I still need these things to come. So that's sort of where I'm at, is if other people have had those issues of getting just the raw materials and supplies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sharon.
Yes, I just wanted to add to, driver shortages, trucks, delays, backup at docks that are affecting international. We're also experiencing this, at least with this winter moves, is really severe weather in certain parts of the country that's causing really bad delays as well. One of the things that I find helpful, and I'm seeing a difference between one carrier and another, is transparency in communication. If you know that you're not going to be able to secure a driver, or a driver is backed out or tested positive for COVID, just being able to communicate that to everyone that's involved is extremely helpful as soon as possible. But with some carriers I'm experiencing, they just become unresponsive to emails, and until the last minute when it's too late. As far as prices, Troy had mentioned things going up as close to, in the over $3.50 range. I shifted one exhibit.
Sorry. It's okay. I wasn't all the way up, so it was.
I shifted one exhibit in Florida, a short move from one carrier to another, and we actually paid almost $20 a mile in shipping. That was the most extreme. Most of what I'm seeing is around the $3.50 to about $7 range. But when you've budgeted, and we saw this coming, so we upped the amount across the board for all shipments. So in the long run, we'll kind of hit an even mark with the ones that are coming in lower and the ones that are coming in higher. But yes, it's extremely challenging to try to anticipate what's going to happen. And communication between the carriers and everyone else involved would be really helpful.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Catherine.
I see Daniel's back too. Daniel, did you want to go ahead first? No?
By all means, you go ahead.
So I'm somewhat new to this whole sort of field. I'm not super new, but everything was sort of like smooth sailing. I feel like I had it figured out until about this year. And I know like I had relationships with certain carriers, and I've recommended those carriers to some of these people on this call. And we've just had like, I've just had a lot of like no shows, refusals at the last minute. I've had a lot of, when I've gone out for quotes, I've had a lot of carriers refuse to quote. And some of that I think is that, it's, within Canada or that sort of thing. So it's not like, my issue is that it's not one carrier. And so I'm constantly on the lookout for other carriers to sort of like go out for quotes. We're also like a provincial agency. And so I have a certain procurement policy that I have to follow. I have to get a certain number of quotes. So I'm constantly expanding like the people that I have to reach out to, which in theory is great, but in actuality, when I've had sort of established relationships with carriers who haven't come through, like I'm constantly rebuilding these new relationships. So I find it's just such a tough time to be in. And Sharon, I think, was talking about pricing. And I can say like before this year, the highest I've paid per mile, which was a terrible lane, like I understand that, but it was just over $5. And now like they're all in the sixes. I've got an $8, $8.50. Like it's not. So I'm trying to be as proactive as I can for the sake of the clients and for the sake of my team, the team that hosts locations. But I find it's really tough. So if anyone has a magic bullet, I would love to hear that if anyone's willing to share.
Yeah, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be a magic mixture. As we're all hearing, there are so many variables that are at play, everything from weather to drivers to availability and all of that. But I did have a really great conversation with Daniel, and now that he's back at his loft, he has a very I love the way that his mind works when it comes to this stuff, because he's always asking the right questions and planning 2 steps ahead. And so Daniel, maybe if if you could share some of the ways that you've approached this, because I know that you've been able to kind of avoid some of these issues.
Hey, so Daniel Guyton, traveling exhibit manager at OMSI. I can talk about logistics all day. Just for those of you who don't know my background, I've been in traveling exhibits in the museum world for a better part of a decade. Started at the Museum of Discovery. Prior to that, I was in trade shows. I have done everything from full load logistics to intermodal. I've had a CDL. I have done LTL loads myself. I've run the gambit. And it is really hard right now. I've been suspect for about a year and have started quoting all of my clients roughly about 30% over what I would have normally stated for a full truckload. And that was hard to do, but I made sure that they knew well enough in advance that they could budget for it. And I have come in at or under on almost all of my loads in quoting. Part of that just has to do with knowledge of lanes versus knowledge of mileage. Those of you talking about, 3.5 versus 8.5 per mile load, those significantly vary when you're talking about outside of interstate loads. And a lot of us deal to smaller institutions that have harder lanes. The things that can make it better, I don't have a silver bullet for anything. I have a almost 14, 15-year relationship with Angela Carlson over at Logistics Transportation, who was getting shouted out in the chat. She is my go-to. I consider her part of my team, as I'm sure many of you do. But it's when she can't get something handled for me or international shipping, I then reach out to Liz over the Shipping Monster. I trust her greatly as well. And I know that we're all having these problems. And I think the best thing that we can do for ourselves is communication to ourselves, communication to our clients. It was what got us through this first really, really chaotic time in 2020. And hence we have been trauma operating ever since. And a lot of us have had zero downtime. And this might have come to a shock to some of us, but for those of us who never kind of left that 80, 90 degree range, it's more expected. Things that I can say, don't do an LTL load. If you can, always quote full load, no matter which way you're going. Get to know any local distributors, United, Mayflower, Atlas, the people that drive home goods. It may be a terrible load for you just because it's kind of outside of their experience, but they'll make sure that things are padded and shipped. You may have to change your whole loadout plan in order to handle a split level. Things of that nature. Try not to get your trucks unhooked. If it goes into a yard, you may never get it out. It's very unfortunate, but pay for trapping. Like, I know it's $500, $800 a day sometimes, but like, if you can, do it, because it may save your client in the 5 and 6 figures, depending on what you're doing. Talk to each other, figure out who's on the front and the back. Let's trap some of these drivers in taking museum loads from place to place to place to place. Generally, they're pretty good. We usually have a good crew. We help them out, that we secure the loads. Like, there's a lot of things that some of these people aren't necessarily used to. Some of them have to load in themselves. Some of them pack a truck up and then work 6 hours getting the load in. Be good to your drivers, wear a mask. They remember these things, even though we may not agree with them sometimes. Like, they are here for us and we are here for them. Trapping is when you say, I need this load to happen on Wednesday. Well, your drive only takes 4 days. And it's on a weekend, and museum doesn't deliver on a weekend. So you have to trap Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Some people will tell you to unhook to a yard halfway, have another driver pick it up. It'll save you $3,000 on that load. Don't let it go into that yard if you can help it. I can talk about this forever and ever and ever and go on. This was no planning on my part. I don't even have an outline, and I'm very uncomfortable right now because I don't have an outline, but.
No, I am totally putting you on the spot, but I really appreciate all of those tips. I think those are some really good things. And I think you're kind of hitting on some of the trends that we're seeing just in a lot of the situations that people are bringing up, where it's, transparency and, having a little bit of grace. And so we do have some shippers and folks that work in logistics that are on the call as well. So Jim was kind enough to chime in earlier, but I do want to just ask them, to Sharon's question and to some of the questions that you guys have asked, how can we frame our relationships with our logistics providers to ask questions to really provide a little bit more transparency into the situations that are going on right now? And do you have any tips or insight as to what's going on?
I'll jump in there. It is crazy. It is just plain crazy. The driver shortage is real. The actual truck shortage is real. The American Trucking Association said as of the start of this year, there was over 80,000 drivers short in this country. What Daniel was saying, great tips there. Perfect. I don't know, I know some of you ship with carriers and some of you ship with brokers. It's a difference there between people who actually own the trucks and people who purchase trucking from someone else. So I know that some of the problems you mentioned are on the broker side. Some are on the carrier side. The whole COVID testing, drivers are getting tested all the time. They do drop out sometimes at the last minute. It can't be helped that way. The transparency does help. We of course try to on our end. I know Angela does over at Logistics. Other carriers like that the same way. Just to keep people informed what's going on. What we see that people can do to help, besides what Daniel was saying, is adding time to your schedule if you can, to have some flexibility that way. A lot of these schedules are very tight. We need to load out on Monday, we need to deliver on Friday because we're going to start putting things back up on Saturday or whatever. If we can get a little more time in the schedule, sometimes that does help. Complete information and accurate information on when you're ordering something. There are a lot of new people out there. Some of them don't know exactly what they're asking for in many times, whether it be an LTL or a truckload. I had one very recently ask me for, and I wrote it down so I had it right. They wanted a high cube, flat floor, curtain side climate trailer. And I said very kindly, if you can show me who makes those, I'd be happy to get our company to buy one. But I don't know what you're talking about. But that person was insisting that's what they needed. That's what they had used before. And I'm like, who'd you call? Let me know. I'd like to see this trailer. So I know that sometimes it gets confusing for people. Sometimes they say, yes, we need a flat floor, but then they got pieces that are too tall for a flat floor, where they really needed a step deck trailer. We get many times where people are insisting on having a flat floor trailer where they don't really need a flat floor trailer. They could use a step deck, and availability, you know, wherever we can get it. If we have a choice of either type of trailer, there's more availability. If the more you narrow down the scope of what's needed, the less availability there is, and the harder it is to service that. Like on our side, we pretty much won't quote a number to somebody if we don't have availability. That's in the near term. In the long term, yeah, we'll quote 6 months out. Here's what it is today, but you need to check a month ahead for availability. I still get a lot of people calling me literally. I mean, I had calls today for loading tomorrow. That availability just isn't there anymore. Where occasionally you'll find one, but it's just not out there that way. The pricing you're seeing is reflecting all the conditions that are going on. Between $3.50 a mile, you said $11. I've seen up to $20 a mile on real short runs. It all depends on the lane. Daniel talked about a lane. The lane in the trucking business is like Chicago to LA is a lane. Minot, North Dakota to Biloxi, Mississippi is a lane, but nobody runs that lane. You'll get all kinds of trucks running Chicago to LA, but if you're doing this same mileage on an out of the way place, your rate per mile is going to be double, triple, quadruple, whatever that Chicago to LA was. That's how the lanes work. If there are popular lanes, and there are lanes where there's plenty of service, and there are lanes where there's just no service available. You know, that's where you're trying to see what you can do to, you know, get that covered. What else you can do is, I hate to say it this way, but when you're budgeting 6 months out or a year out or whatever it is, like Daniel said, he put 30% on top. Add to your budget just just in case. If you look at it that way and it comes in less, you know, perfect. But yeah, it's I don't know. I don't see it coming to an improved situation anytime soon. As more and more things pop up. Even this recent, on the 15th, Canada announced that unvaccinated drivers from the US can't come into Canada. You have to have a vaccine card to cross the border. Canadian drivers can cross back out, but if they cross back into Canada and they're not vaccinated, then they've got an 8-day quarantine after they deliver. So you've got that whole group of drivers that are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated that really can't cross the border anymore. So right away, pricing to Canada spiked the very next day. So it's things like that pop up. We get the same from industry people that, you know, you can't send an unvaccinated driver. Well, you know, you can't tell me that the day before we're going to deliver there. I mean, some of those, the drivers never even really getting out of the truck, but they won't let them on the property. So any sort of rules, any sort of specifics that you have, let the carrier, let the broker know ahead of time. So they're looking for and finding the right truck for you. I don't know really what else to say on some of that, except that, you know, planning as far ahead as you can, and then having some contingency just in case.
That's great, Jim. Thank you so much. There's a lot of tips to unpack in there. Liz and Robert, I see that you guys are on the line. Is there anything that you guys would like to add to what Jim just shared?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Jim had some great tips there. One thing that brought to mind from my perspective too is a lot of you have multiple bids and quotes when you're doing shipping. Making sure that those are apples to apples. If
Sorry,
something's
Liz, I'm
coming
not sure if anyone
in
else is having the same problem. We're having a trouble hearing you. Is that the
really
same for everybody?
low, and you see them really high, it might be a broker versus carrier option. So make sure that the bids that you're getting are representing the same service. That way you know what you're getting into. And with, oh shoot.
Let's see here. Liz, you were kind of breaking up just a little
I'm
bit.
sorry. I don't know.
I think you're onto a really good note about making sure that if you're comparing bids, that it's an apples to apples sort of comparison.
So is it still spotty? I don't know. Sometimes maybe if it doesn't have to focus on the camera.
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Yes, I don't know. If you can hear me, I'll keep going.
Yeah, we can hear you, Liz.
I was talking about kind of the differences with a broker price brokers, but that doesn't guarantee that they've got the coverage. To that, sorry, kind of lost my train of thought. It's understanding their process too. So if they don't have coverage, what is their process for, if you're working with a broker for sourcing that capacity? Do they start 2 weeks out, a week out, day before, that kind of thing? That way you can
oh, you're back, Liz.
I don't know, Robert, I'm sorry, I'm having internet issues. Maybe I'll jump off and jump back on. Robert, I don't know if you could maybe speak for me a little here.
As well, yeah, as long as everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah. Hi, Robert.
Hi. So, yes, what Liz is trying to say is, and Jim is exactly right, there's two ways that we do it. Normally through companies that own their own trucks, which is our preferred way. And then we can go out to brokers, which is obviously cheaper. And then what we found with the brokers is how quickly they actually source the trucks and the loads, and how quickly they book the loads. So as capacity has shrunk and drivers have disappeared, we found that a lot of the brokers don't even start working on finding a truck for that load until maybe 48 hours before. We've also had instances where it's been 24 hours before. But if we're able to use our own people, obviously we can confirm it as far out as you need us to confirm it. But, the biggest issue is always price. And unfortunately, supply chain wise, if Walmart are paying more, then everyone's paying more, right? It's just an unfortunate situation that the prices, I think, are going to remain like this for the remainder of the year. And then what you also have is a bunch of bad actors coming in and making things worse for everyone. We actually had a situation where we had a trusted carrier that we had used a lot. And they didn't tell us that they brokered out our load. So we ended up using a trucker that we'd never heard of. We certainly didn't book, and we certainly didn't want, and they weren't anyone who knew our business, and the whole thing went sideways. And then we couldn't recover it. We got lied that, the broker load, they lied to the carrier then unfortunately lied to us, not knowing that they were lies. And the whole thing unraveled. So that's one of the biggest issues right now with trucking is making sure that you're comparing like for like. And the thing with some of the carriers is they only have a certain amount of capacity. So they'll take on bookings, and then if they pick up something that pays more, they'll drop you. And so it's tough because we want to give everyone the best possible service. But these days, we can't give you the best possible price for the best possible service. At some point, the market's going to have to shift that you're going to have to pay to play. And in air freight and ocean freight, Man, that is exactly what's happening right now. The more money that you can throw at ocean freight, the better it's going to be. And it looks like trucking is heading in that direction, which is, you know, horrifying for everyone. But again, there's no magic bullet. I don't think it's going to get any better. And I don't really know what you guys can do about it, because no one wants to pay more for a line item you can't recoup, right? And we are a line item you can't recoup.
Right. So Robert, some of the organizations that are on the line, I know, are required by their organization to get a number of bids, and some of those organizations have a low bid mandate where they have to go with, you know, whoever's lowest. Are there questions that they can be asking to make sure that they're covering all of their bases so that they don't get into one of these sticky situations, as much as they can?
As much as you can. I mean, the hard part is explaining to those above you that are only looking at the dollars and cents what you're actually getting. So, you know, as Liz was saying while she was breaking up, the main thing is, what does the cheaper price cover? What does the truck look like? Who is the driver? Have you done the work before? Because you guys talk about dollars per mile, and you look at an industry average, that has literally nothing to do with you guys. Your stuff is specialist. Your stuff is unusual. And the dollar per mile relates to Kroger, to Publix, to people that are shipping thousands of loads constantly. So at some point you have to take the punt, right? You have to be like, we're either going to pay cheap. And then as Jim said, pad out some time and make sure that you can cover it, or you're going to have to guarantee it and really pay prices that are going to be higher than they were a couple of years ago. So, I mean, on my part, I'm always really interested as to what's the driving factor for going for the cheapest possible rate. And then we have customers that are like, it's got to be bargain basement. Well, okay, that's cool. We can do bargain basement, but it's not going to be perfect. And then we have other customers that are like, we don't want to touch bargain basement. We want to make sure that it gets there on time and everything's good. So, I mean, I'm always really interested talking to people to find out what pushes that. I know there's so many people here that are like, there's nothing I can do. My boss wants me to get the cheapest possible rate, or it's just not going to work. So internally, is that something that we can overcome?
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions here. Peter?
Yeah, I'm Peter Garland. I'm with the Museum of Science in Boston, and been playing this game for about 30 years. It's sort of along quickly what was just mentioned. One thing when I did have to get bids, I made sure that who I got the bids from were all people who I felt were capable. Sometimes people make the mistake and just they pick someone who they really wouldn't want to use, and they put them up against the players they might prefer. And if that bid's low, they're kind of trapped. But if you get 3 bids from 3 reputable groups that you know you can work with, that's one way to make sure at least you've so to speak hedged your bet to get good service. Because I have seen the whole issue with drivers saying, oh, I got a better job on this one, I'm gonna bag the one that you were counting on them showing up for. And I've had drivers show up a day late, 2 days late. We had one driver try and push us to load a day early so he could do something else. We've had them with golf carts on their supposedly empty trucks. We've had everything. So you want to make sure, because it can really ruin everything. I did want to kind of also throw something out there maybe for next time. One of the things we do right now, we have an 8-truck show in the US that's running around, and it's going to have to find some storage for a bit. And then we have a duplicate show, and that's currently in Japan. Now, we were just in Hong Kong, and things to consider if you're traveling internationally is have an A plan, a B plan, and a C plan. So our A plan, we were lucky to get there. Unfortunately, it was modified because we had to spend 3 weeks sitting in a hotel going nowhere first during quarantine. And then, of course, in quarantine, they said, oh, they might have to ship us off for 2 more weeks of quarantine, which was our load time. So you need to be ready to make changes on the fly. And we did have some backup ideas on that, fortunately. We were then supposed to go to Japan, and as we were making arrangements, Japan, of course, closed the doors. So fortunately, the group we're working with there has done the show before. So one of the things to think about is how you're going to connect with them via the lovely internet. And right now, you know, there's also a little bit of a translation issue. So it's even tougher when you're trying to point to how they're strapping something down or putting it together. And I found myself often with a pad of paper, and I will draw out what they need to do, and then I will place it in front of the camera. But they're showing me through, you know, their phone camera, or some people are using GoPros, whatever. You got to kind of sometimes think back a little, but also then be prepared for questions you have no idea what they're going to ask. And if you have drawings and can share screen, you can quickly pull up a drawing that says, this is how the strap goes around. These are how the bolts go in. And you monitor how they're putting everything together. So that's been probably one of our bigger challenges right now, because like I said, it's in Japan, but then we're going to have to pack it up out of Japan and get it in containers to get to Europe. So that'll be a whole nother game. But I just wanted to throw that out there as well. So it's not just local transportation that's causing some issues for us, but the key thing I've always found, you know, it's the plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you do have a backup plan. Some people say you should never have a backup plan. That means your original plan isn't good, but I disagree with that, because you don't know what's going to change. And we've had a lot of changes that just were completely unexpected. And you want to just be as efficient as you can. So sometimes it costs a little more on one end, but if you've counted all these other ways that, oh, you could save money this way and this way, and then something changes on you, then you're really stuck trying to catch up. I mean, getting crews around the US is tough enough, but trying to get them overseas has become even a whole new challenge.
Definitely. Thanks, Peter. Paul, then Justin, then Mr. Mike Lewis. Or we will skip over Paul for right now.
No, I'm here. I made it. Cynthia, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hey guys, thank you. I'm really appreciating this. You know, Robert, I was glad to hear you say about how some of these guys will just dump you for another load, because I talked to Troy about this, and it kind of felt that's happened to me. We just had an issue in Denver with 3 trucks, 3 separate drivers, all not showing. I don't think you were on the call at the very beginning. And I'm like, you know, 5 of the last trucks we have tried to book, you know, we've been told that 5 of the 6 drivers have COVID and they can't deliver. And I'm like, it's starting to feel to me like there's just better bids coming in. I think one thing that might be able to help organizations like ours, where we're faced catastrophic losses when we can't deliver, is that, you know, and maybe we have to communicate better to understand, like, okay, hang on a second. If we're getting a price from a broker, we need to know, like, okay, this is the discount price, and this is the price that you have to pay if you can guarantee that the truck's going to come. You know, when we've dealt with brokers in the past, we've never been given 2 separate prices, if that makes sense. So maybe that's something we should be doing. I would rather pay, you know, 30% more or 40% more right now with the struggles that we've had with shipping, and know that things are going to arrive on time. So maybe that's a question that we should be doing a better job with if we're dealing with a broker or a shipping company, is just simply asking that question, you know. And maybe the brokers have to do a better job of saying, okay, look, we can broker this out, but this could happen. If you want the guaranteed rate, it's going to be that price. So I think when you're talking about organizations that are getting multiple prices, you know, that works 2 ways. If a trucking company has multiple prices, I think that the client also has to know that there's multiple prices, and one is guaranteed and one might not be quite so guaranteed. I hope that makes sense. But
that really helps me better understand how the industry is working from your side as well. And I can't remember the other gentleman's name that was speaking from the logistics side. I very much appreciate everyone's time and input. It helps me better understand. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. So one thing I'd like to add is, as a company, we did decide to do exactly that. So we, and in fact, Sharon on the call here has been a recipient. We'll quote two different ways. We'll quote broker, we'll quote normal trucker, and then it's entirely up to you guys. I'm now to the point where I don't think we're going to quote broker anymore, purely because from our side, it makes us look stupid when people don't show up and the driver's on meth and he disappears for days and all this foolishness that we've had to deal with. And the other side of it is I can't afford it. If someone is dealing with one truck that disappears, we don't make more money on a cheaper load than we do a more expensive load. So we're still burning through overhead trying to track down this one rogue broker load. It doesn't make any sense for us. But we have been quoting the two separate prices and really being as transparent as we can be. So yeah, I mean, it is a problem.
All right, Justin.
I would just wanted to add on to Peter's note earlier about just being very specific what you're asking for, particularly in required bid environments. I came from the Smithsonian before here, and procurement was miserably arcane. But one of the great solutions we had was really, really digging in, calling up folks like Daniel and asking all the questions of what needs to be in this document and knowing the specs that go into it, so that it was intensely hyper specified trucking at the end of the day. And it feels like you're going too far and it feels like you're doing too much, but it often resulted in getting what we actually needed. And you get folks the caliber of Jim and his team getting stuff done. You actually get what you're looking for. The other thing we've seen just kind of at the local level is a lot of need for the folks who we're interfacing with just being patient, because they are stretched tremendously thin. The last 3 drivers that have hit our dock have showed up without paperwork, having no idea what they were supposed to do, getting a text message with an address and just saying, show up here and do something. And they had no idea what they were in for. So I think the other side of that is we've had to really increase, just at kind of the Ravenswood side of things, the level of documentation we're prepared to provide and the level of information that we're providing, because it's not making it from a purchase to a driver. It's getting lost somewhere in that chain. So yeah.
Thanks for that. Mike.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Mike Lewis. I'm with a company called World Heritage Exhibitions. So I am actually formerly from OMSI's traveling exhibit program back in the day. And lots of really good comments. I think one thing that when we talk about talking with your shipping and logistics providers, the importance of transparency and that you trust them. I think similarly, as traveling exhibit providers, it's our responsibility to be smart about logistics, but to also transfer that knowledge to our clients, right? And help educate them that shipping is a commodity, right? The prices fluctuate. And I think that there's a couple ways to do that. And one of the things I'd want to underscore that's really important is your contracting and educating your client on the risks of shipping, having ranges in your shipping rates, and knowing that they might be, when you say like adding a 30% contingency, or even having, hey, this could cost from here to here, and note that what we're quoting you 2 years in advance, right, that could change. So we're giving you a range because things can change. Similarly, I think on your install plans, give yourself contingency time. So if a truck shows up 2 days late, you're not freaking out. So I think those things are critical. And some of what I've seen in the chat that just came out, I want to underscore when you talk about the importance of load plans and manuals. And I also want to kind of underscore the importance of design, the design of your exhibit, the design of your crating and carting systems and making sure that those are really dialed in, because not only can they be simpler to load and unload and safer, you can cut down truck size. Like if you can cut a truck out of your shipping by redesigning your crate and cart system to cut a truck out, you've eliminated one truck worth of risk and you've eliminated one truck worth of cost. And I think that front end work is really critical. And then we also talk about quoting and that when your institution requires that, I think the other thing to do is, if you can, advocate for the exception to quoting. Because when back early OMSI days, we had that same requirement. And we came back to management and said, look, this isn't something that you want to do lowest option because it makes a difference. So we worked out something with them where we had providers every 2 years, we'd go to quotes, but only every 2 years, and it wasn't always the lowest cost option. And there were other evaluations, like build a matrix, right? Have metrics for evaluating your shipping so that it's not just based on price, but it's based on a number of factors, right? And maybe that's how you evaluate your choices so that you make sure that you're getting quality. But you know, I think shipping is hard to understand, and it's important to get smart about it as people utilizing logistics. And it's important to educate your clients about the risks so that they can make intelligent decisions. You know, when you talk about the 2 price options, you can go, look, here's the guarantees that we can give, and here's what we can't guarantee. And there's risk in this, but if we have a higher price, you lower your risk. So I think if you can build that into a contract, like the same, you know, that the pricing may fluctuate, and here's the range in which it may fluctuate, that the timing may not be exact, or if you want pinpoint timing, you're going to pay a premium, build that into your contracts. Because your shipping logistics providers are building that into their contracts. You should be building it into your contracts with your clients, and then taking the time to talk it through with them so that they understand what they're signing, because they don't, as we all know, they don't always read them. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, no, that was really good, Mike. Yeah, I think, you know, taking that time and being really intentional is really what's hopefully going to mitigate some of these issues in the future. We're now at time, so I do want to be mindful of everyone's schedules, but I do want to thank everyone for your participation, for sharing. We knew that we would not be able to solve all of the world's problems in 1 hour, but I do hope that, you know, creating a space of openness and a space for sharing has hopefully provided at least a little bit of insight or some tips that you can carry forward. I have been taking notes throughout this this call, and so my hope is that we can kind of put together a list of a bunch of questions that you can ask, some ways to approach this. I'm also going to include Robert, Liz, and Jim's contact info, so that, you know, as you're kind of traversing this, if you are looking for, I would call both of them, you know, our trusted folks, as well as Angie from Logics, who I spoke with this morning. And, you know, and hopefully, you know, the next turnover is not as gray hair inducing. So thank you so much for joining us. I'll keep the room open here if you guys want to chat a little bit more, but otherwise, thank you so much.
Thanks, Cynthia, for organizing this.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Everyone.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Bye. Great seeing you all.
I'm sorry, it's just I was